Zack Reed, thank you so much for being here and talking with us today. We're going to start by talking about crime and safety, two things I know that are very important to Clevelanders right now. What's the most important police reform you will pursue as mayor?
Accountability.
Period?
Period.
Has the consent decree made necessary reforms? Has it achieved its goals?
No.
Okay, you're really being brief for me today. What will you do to make residents across the city feel more safe?
Be more visible. Because if I walk the street and I'm out there talking with them, walking with them, listening to them, they have the opportunity to talk to the mayor of the city of Cleveland. If they feel that I'm out there learning from them, me learning, they're learning from me, then we now have an opportunity to set up the type of partnership that I want them to know my entire administration to have, especially the people within the safety forces.
What kind of accountability do you think that the safety forces need?
They need to know that that all policing must be done constitutionally. And when they're not doing policing constitutionally, they got to be held accountable. I mean, the latest example that we've had was last year during the George Floyd protest downtown. I mean, I was there with my son. And I took him, as I've taken him to many protests across the city of Cleveland, when the president decided to put little babies in cages. I took him down to Public Square when the president put in the immigration ban. I took him out to the airport. So I said this was a great chance to take him once again to downtown Cleveland. Everybody knows that police officers had literally killed a person right on national TV, and we got to see it. So I want him to see that it's not enough to just complain about something. I want him to know that you got to go out there on the front lines and you got to let your disgust become and go into action. And we were there, and there were people hollering, and they were screaming, and they were doing things to police officers that I wish they had not done, but they weren't going over the top. And then suddenly, tear gas starts flying our way. And suddenly, rubber bullets start flying our way. And suddenly, they start coming at us as if we are not doing what the Constitution gives us the right to do, and that's to protest. Yep. And when you see that, that's why I could say to you point blank, the consent decree has not been enough. And it's not working. Because if it had worked, those police officers who have been trained and know that we're under consent decree would not have done what they did. And therefore, that's what the accountability comes about. That the mayor of the city of Cleveland should have known right then and there that something is not right. And then you got a police chief who I've called on to be relieved of his duties, so he should be, Calvin Williams. He comes and tells you that we were trying to get inside the building. We were never trying to get inside the building. And I'm glad the sheriff stepped up and said, no one ever got inside the building. No one was even trying to get inside the building. So when see, that's what I'm saying. The police chief who works for the mayor stands up and tells the general public that we're doing this and we're doing this and we're trying to get inside the building, knowing we are not trying to get inside the building. Was he held accountable for not telling the truth to the public? No. He has continued to keep his job. And the citizens of the city of Cleveland continue to be unsafe in their wards and their communities and their neighborhoods. That's what accountability is all about. When the mayor of the city of Cleveland stands up and lets everyone know, whether it's the patrol officer that's walking the beat, or whether it's the police chief that's sitting beside me, standing beside me, everyone's going to be held accountable.
What's the single most important step you'll take to combat rising violent crime in the city?
Oh, we're going to start looking at it from a different lens. I mean, for far too long, we've looked at the criminal justice in the city of Cleveland from one lens, and that's the criminal justice lens. But there's another lens. We need to start looking at it from a public health lens. This is a public health problem. And you can see, when someone tells you they're going to put more police on the street, we've put more police on the street, and it has not worked, has not made us safer. And they put more police on the street around the country, and the country hasn't got safer. But those cities that have implemented a public health approach, the approach that I've tried to get the city of Cleveland to bring to the city of Cleveland on more than one occasion, which we have not done, the cure violence approach. that looks at it from what it is. The leading cause of death for an African American male between the ages of 18 to 24 is homicide. So when you look at the fact that a few weeks ago we just had our 100th homicide again. For 10 straight years, City of Cleveland has had at least 100 homicides. 75 to 80% of those homicides are young black men. If young black men were dying from some infectious disease or cancer at this alarming rate, we would look at it and try to figure out why are young black men dying at this rate. So why are we not looking at why are young black men dying from this alarming rate simply because it's homicide? Because they've been dying from gunshots? So we just basically say, well, it just happens. They happen to live in these bad neighborhoods. They just happen to be around people with guns. We don't say that when people have cancer. We try to figure out, why are you dying from cancer? We don't say that when people have this infectious disease. We try to figure out why, and we find solutions. And this organization that's called Cure Violence goes around the nation. These are formerly incarcerated men and women, and they go into those hard-hit neighborhoods. And they talk to these individuals, and they let them know, this is not gonna work out good for you. You're either gonna go to jail, or you're gonna find yourself in a box 6 feet down. Let's try a different approach. And that's why you gotta have a mayor that's visible, that's out there, that has street credit, and that's able to go out there and let them know, okay, what do you need? And in some cases, the needs are different. Some cases, they might need a job. Some of them might need a roof over their head. Some of them might need better education. Some of them might need a father figure. But whatever they need to put down that gun, to not shoot somebody close to them, my job, our job, the government's job is to provide safety. So we've got to do whatever we can to ensure that we provide safe streets, safe neighborhoods. And this approach has worked across the nation. I'm going to bring Cure Violence to the city of Cleveland. They're going to work with our police officers. They're going to work with our residents. And I would guarantee you, Sarah, that in that first year, you will see a vast reduction of violence in the city of Cleveland simply because we're going to start looking at the violence from what it is, a public health issue.
Thank you. Illegal dirt bike riders not only have become a symbol of lawlessness in the city, but they do pose a real safety risk. How will you address that issue?
Well, first of all, we got to let them know what you're doing is wrong. It's lawlessness. You're breaking the law. I mean, when you look at a Kelly Jackson administration has gone along with these dirt bike riders, appeased these dirt bike riders, that the fact that we're going to build a $2.3 million dirt bike track, which you know I voted against, you know, when you do those type of things, then they feel as if, okay, everything's all right, everything's cool. But it's not all right, and it's not cool. So you first got to let them know what you're doing is breaking the law. Now, once we come to a realization and we come to an agreement that you're breaking the law, now we can have a conversation of how we're going to resolve this problem that you're creating in our wards, in our communities, in our neighborhood, which is chaos. But you first got to get to them, which we have not gotten to them, that you are literally breaking the law. And I've used the analogy that if a bank robber is robbing a bank and the alarm goes off and the police get there, the police are going to chase that bank robber because they broke the law. How do you have a policy in place that said someone's breaking the law, we're not going to chase you? So you first got to let them know you're breaking the law, and Zack Reed's administration is clearly going to enforce the law. Now, we can figure out what we need to do so you can have the fun that you want to have, because that's the main reason they do it on the streets. That's why I knew that dirt bike track was never going to work. They don't want to go riding around some track. They want to be out there on the street. They want to see the girls out there hollering and screaming while they're doing their wheelies and all that. But Ms. Jones and Mr. Jenkins don't want to see that in the streets. They're terrified. So, and the bigger question we should ask ourselves, since council, the majority of council, which I voted against, decided to spend $2.3 million on a dirt bike track that I told them from the start was never going to get built in the city of Cleveland. Where's our $2.3 million? Because we could be using that $2.3 million to help in these wards, in these communities, in our neighborhoods, to create safer neighborhoods.
Before we move on to economy, because we're going to talk about that next, just quickly, neighborhood police mini stations, would you bring them back?
Oh, I bring back more than one. When I first became a councilman, and as you know, I was a councilman for 17 years, my first office was within a mini police station. So I know the importance of them. I know why we don't have them. The former police chief, Michael McGrath, felt that everything needed to come from downtown. Everything had to be centralized in downtown. And everything had to be under the control of downtown. So therefore, since the many police stations were out in the neighborhoods and being basically controlled by commanders, he didn't like it. And I would always say, you know and I know those many police stations work. If we're going to resolve this overall problem of crime in the city of Cleveland, we got to set up a real partnership. It's got to be a partnership between the citizens of the city of Cleveland, the institutions and the business people in those communities, and the safety forces, and the residents. All of that has to work together, because you're never going to be able to have enough police officers in wards, in communities, in neighborhoods, on every corner. And that's why it's got to be a partnership. And that's why I say, in my 10-point plan that I tell people about all the time, look at it. It talks about real community policing. Putting a mini police station in the neighborhood's great, and it's fantastic, and I'm going to do it. And like I said, I'm going to have more than one. But those police officers got to be out in the community. They got to be walking the beat. They got to be going into the neighborhood stores. They got to worship on Sunday with the people in the community. They got to play basketball just organically. You know, I'm just going down the street and I see them over here playing basketball. Hey guys, let's go shoot a hoop with them. They're throwing a football. Hey, let's go throw the football. You know, and the only way they can do that, they got to stop speeding from call to call to call. And the only way we stop that is we got to reduce the violence in the city of Cleveland.
All right, let's talk about the economy and recovery now. What's the first thing you will do as mayor to help the city recover from the pandemic?
I'll take that $500 million that we have and I put it into giving it to work with small businesses. Small businesses are the lifeline of our community. As you know, I was the minority affairs coordinator for the minority affairs coordinator for Frank LaRose, Secretary of State, for the past 3 years. And my job was to travel the state of Ohio, speaking to minority businesses, organizations, and individuals about ways that you can start a business, you can maintain your business, or you can grow your business. And I look at what the mayor of Cincinnati did when he got his money. One of the first things he said is, we know the small businesses that were hit the hardest during the pandemic were minority businesses and businesses owned by women. And therefore, we're going to take a significant amount of the money that we've got and we're going to put it into those small businesses, minority businesses and women-owned businesses. Because you look at a neighborhood like a Buckeye. A neighborhood like Buckeye is not going to have some big conglomerate, big corporation come in and say, I'm going to put 1,000 jobs on Buckeye Road. It's not going to happen on Buckeye. It's not going to happen on 105th. It's not going to happen on Kinsman. It's just not going to happen in most of our neighborhoods around the city of Cleveland. But you know what is a lifeline of some of these neighborhoods? And most of these neighborhoods are small businesses. You know, the mom and pop store. Person who just wants to own a coffee shop. Person who just wants to own an ice cream shop. Person who just wants to open a restaurant. And they've been hit the hardest during this pandemic when you look at what they're trying to do in our wards and our communities and our neighborhoods. And if we're not working with them to make sure that they're going to stay in our neighborhoods, because we're not going to get, like I say, like the big Walmarts to come in and the big Home Depots to come into our communities. But we can get those individuals that are, you know, baking cakes in their basement or in their kitchen. We can get those individuals that are doing those things like doing sewing and things like that in their garages or in their houses. We can convince them that, hey, what you're doing is great and you got a great commodity, you got a great product. Let's take it to the front. Let's take it to the front streets. Let's bring it out there so everybody can participate in what you're doing. And that's why you got to say that the money that we've gotten, we need to start utilizing that to put these small businesses in our wards and in our communities and our neighborhoods. There's no reason in the world, you look at 105 right now. Look at 105 from Superior back to St. Clair. A long stretch. It looks like a bomb hit it. I'm grateful and thankful that they're now reconstructing the street, but look at the storefronts. They're not there. Go down to Buckeye. They're not there. I just walked down St. Clair the other day in Collinwood. Vacant buildings, vacant storefronts. Under my administration, we're going to open them up because I remember growing up on Kinsman Road in Mount Pleasant, and I remember the restaurants. I remember the stores. I remember the businesses. I remember the opportunity when I was a young kid growing up delivering the Cleveland Press and delivering the Cleveland Plain Dealer to be able to go into these stores and listen to the stories about what was happening in our communities. These young people need to be able to see the same thing.
You started to mention it, but how else will you spend that $500 million that Cleveland is expecting from the American Rescue Act?
Well, I think first of all, you first got to look at who has been hit the hardest and make sure that they're being taken care of first and foremost. The other thing is, it's not enough for me to say what I'm going to do with it. If I was mayor right now, I would be going out and having forums around the city of Cleveland. I would be having town halls around the city of Cleveland. And I would ask the residents of the city of Cleveland, we just got $511 million. Excuse me. How would you like us to use this money? What do you think's best to recover your neighborhood? Because these are their neighborhoods. You know, I'm fortunate to have grown up in Mount Pleasant. I still live in Mount Pleasant. But the people in West Park know what's best for West Park. It's not for me to dictate to West Park what's good for West Park. I need to listen to the people in West Park. The people in Collinwood know what's best for Collinwood, so I need to be listening to the people in Collinwood. So that's why I go back to when you were talking about the accountability again. A mayor needs to be transparent. His administration needs to be transparent. The people that work with him needs to be visible and transparent out there in those communities. You know, I know it firsthand because I've had the pleasure to work with one, Mayor Willie Brown in San Francisco. And I just remember what he would always say, the best way to learn your city is to walk your city. The best way to learn these neighborhoods and what the people want in these neighborhoods and what they need in these neighborhoods and what they deserve in these neighborhoods is to go out there and talk to them. And under the Kelly Jackson administration, we have not done that. We have not done that. We barely ever see the mayor of the city of Cleveland. We barely ever see city council out in our community as a whole. But these are our elected officials. You know, one thing they would tell you, now I was a councilman for 17 years, they would tell you point blank, we always saw Zack. We would see him just walking down the street, getting his gas. I only buy my gas in my own neighborhood. You know, because they need to see the person that's closest to City Hall in that community, because if they have a problem, they want to know that somebody has their back. And they know I've got their back all the time.
Let's talk about education now. What's the first thing you will do as mayor to make up for the educational losses suffered by Cleveland's public school children during the pandemic?
Well, first of all, it comes down to listening again. I think we've got to have a conversation with the teachers. Let's talk to the teachers union. I mean, how badly were we affected? Because in cases, we know that they still were trying to teach, but they were teaching online. I mean, we know that the students were trying their hardest to learn online. And we know in a city that we don't have a very good track record of doing broadband across the city. We know it's difficult. So let's first hear from them firsthand. Let's listen to the teachers and find out how bad really was it. And then when they tell us how bad it really was, then it's not, okay, it was that bad, but this is what we need. And if you really want to see the educational level go from here to here, Mr. Mayor, this is what we need. And then my job as mayor of the city of Cleveland is to say, this is what they say they need to move us from this level to this level. Because we haven't been we haven't been a success as it relates to the report card since Gene Sanders left. So we clearly aren't doing something right. And we know since the pandemic that really hurt us. So you can look behind this, you can look at the black and white and say, well, things didn't go very well. Well, that can tell us on paper things didn't go very well. But the teachers know firsthand, the administrators know firsthand, the principals know firsthand. What is it going to take? See, my approach to government has always been, you can't do it from top down. It has to be from the bottom up. As a intergovernmental affairs officer for the San Francisco Housing Authority for 4 years, San Francisco Housing Authority, when I went out there in 1996, was considered one of the worst public housing developments in the entire nation. Secretary Como, who is now, just resigned as Governor Como, was the Secretary of HUD. And he sent a letter saying to Mayor Brown and to my boss, Ronnie Davis, that if you don't do these programs, we're going to take these away from you. And we went out there and we started listening to the residents of the public housing development, San Francisco Housing Development. And I remember my boss saying to me, our job is to listen to them. We come here, they live here 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We come here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and sometime on Saturday and go home. Mm-hmm. They know what they need. They know what they want. Our job is to get them what they need, what they say they want. Sarah, we did that. And in 1 year, we went from the worst housing authorities in the nation to one of the most improved housing authorities in the nation, simply because we listened to the residents. And what did it do? It brought about a partnership. Because before we got there, the residents were on this side of the street, safety forces were on that side of the street, City Hall was on this side of the street. There was no coming together. What we did is bring us all together. Because if our main objective is to improve public housing, then how do we got to get around the table and figure out how do we work together to improve public housing. My thing's the same thing here in government. Mm-hmm. If we want to have safer neighborhoods, then we got to come together. We got to bring our police to the table. We got to bring our CDCs to the table. We got to bring our residents to the table. We all got to be working. If our objectives aren't to have safer neighborhoods, then we're not going to come together. If our objectives are to create jobs and economic opportunities in these wards that have not had investment, then we're not going to come together. But I've got faith in the citizens of the city of Cleveland. I think they want every one of our neighborhoods, all 34 neighborhoods in the city of Cleveland, to prosper, to grow. They don't want to have what we have right now, the haves versus the have-not. Some neighborhoods prospering and moving forward, and other neighborhoods struggling to just maintain every single day.
Okay. Back to education for a second. You mentioned the digital divide, but what will you do as mayor going forward to close that digital divide that was highlighted during the pandemic?
I'll do it like they're doing in Nashville right now. I'll be utilizing the fact that we've got a city-owned utility, CPP. Those are our lines out there. Those are our utility poles out there. Those are our street lights out there. So we should be utilizing those poles and utilizing those that city infrastructure to ensure that broadband is going to be taken across this entire city. We've got the technology right there. We just don't have the vision. We don't have someone that's going to show that leadership. You know, that the fact that we got broadband in just one neighborhood. I mean, we've had broadband in one neighborhood, free broadband in one neighborhood for over a decade. You don't think we've learned from that one neighborhood? You don't think that we could have broadened the success of the broadband in that one neighborhood across the city? To at least be able to say within a decade, we should at least have it in at least half of the city right now. Like I say, we own the utility poles out there. We own all the street lights. All the street lights in the city of Cleveland are maintained by us, city of Cleveland. So the infrastructure there, the leadership and the vision to get it done's not there. And as mayor of the city of Cleveland, I've got that leadership and I've got that vision, and I'm going to get it done.
Let's talk about something that's been in the news of late. and some broader city issues now. Do you support public funding of the proposed renovation of Progressive Field? Why or why not?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. We own it. I mean, when I hear these people say, well, we shouldn't invest in the Brown Stadium, and we shouldn't invest in the Q Arena, and we shouldn't invest in Progressive Field. Well, these are the same people that want us to invest in the West Side Market. We own the West Side Market. These are the same people who may say that we shouldn't, that should we or should we not invest in Cleveland Hopkins Airport. We own the airport. These are assets in the city of Cleveland, okay? The only thing that I asked, and I asked it when we were going through the conversation with the Q deal. How is the renovation of the Q going to benefit the people in the neighborhood? Because this is what this election's all about. This election is about neighborhoods. And if we're just putting a glass facade on a building, as we did the Q, and renovate the Q to get the All-Star game, that doesn't benefit Miss Johnson that lives in Collinwood. Because she's not coming to the All-Star game. Probably can't even afford a ticket to come to the All-Star game. And probably if you gave her a ticket, she probably wouldn't come. Okay? But she loves her Cavs. She might want to go down there to see Elton John. You know? So the thing is, how do we tie in those renovations of those sports facilities back to the neighborhood? And it can be done, but you've got to have the will to get it done. You know, I'll go back to my mentor and friend, Mayor Willie Brown. He always told me, he said, money is never the problem. It is the will for people to do the right thing. Right now, we don't have the will to do these things. We like the fact that we can put a glass facade on the Q Arena and make us feel good about ourselves, and next year we get an All-Star game. But we're still the poorest city in America. We're still one of the most violent cities in America. Half of our children that live in the city of Cleveland live in poverty. So there is a way to do both. But you've got to, once again, you've got to sit down with these owners, and you've got to have a conversation with the owners, and you've got to be able to say, I'm going to give you what you want, but you've got to help me out in these communities. And I know the Dolans want to do it. I know the Haslams want to do it. And I know Dan Gilbert, they want to do it. But they got to be brought to the table, and they got to be they got to have a plan on how we're going to get this done. Because they know they're a vital part of the community. And they want to be, they don't, when you own the Browns, the Indians, and the Cavs, they don't want to be known as the poorest city in America. That's a slap to them too. This is part of their city. And therefore, you got to have a mayor that understands that these problems are your problems, they're my problems, they're the people I represent's problems, and we got to do something about them. You know, the thing about it, I've always said this, you know, Cleveland does the easy things. You know, John F. Kennedy said, we choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Cleveland is good at doing the easy things. It's time to put a mayor down there that's willing to take on the hard challenges of this city. How do we make every neighborhood in this city safe? How do we ensure that every child that goes to Cleveland Municipal School District and graduates, how do we ensure that they come out of that school district like I came out of that school district, ready and prepared to take on the task of living in America? How do we ensure that women that are living in our wards and our communities, that are leading, that are heading up these households, how do they know that somebody has their back? See, these are the hard things. These are the things where you got to have somebody with experience that's willing to roll up their sleeves and go to City Hall and know that the funding is there, knowing the resources is there, but knowing that you've got to put the funding and resources where it is needed. You know, people always ask me, well, Zach, and you haven't asked me yet, but I'm quite sure you will because you're a damn good reporter. You know, ask the question, where are you going to get this money from? Where are you going to get the money from? And I always say to people, isn't it funny that we always ask that question when we want to spend money in the neighborhood, where would we get the money from? Where would we get the money from? We just gave Sherwin-Williams $100 million. We just gave Sherwin-Williams $100 million. The poorest city in the nation. Did we ask where we're going to get that $100 million from? We don't even know what the building's going to look like. They want to build a building on Public Square and build another one in the warehouse district that's going to put a catwalk across, and we don't want the catwalk, but they still got their $100 million. So how is it that every time these individuals step to the table and we find the hundreds of millions of dollars to give to them to do what they think is best for their business and their organization, but when I want to find money to make our wards safer, people ask me where they're going to find the money. When I want to ensure that Mr. Jones, that lives in the Lee Harvard neighborhood, who wants to stay in the Lee Harvard neighborhood because he's lived there for 50 years, wants to put a roof on his house, and I feel as if I should be able to help him put a roof on his house, or the person living in Slavic Village wants to put new steps in, and people want to ask me where I'm going to find the money to give her money to be able to put new steps in her neighborhood in Slavic Village, but no one ever asked where we're going to find $100 million for these businesses, and I'm all for that. Time and time again, I've voted for this. But the time has now come for us to decide that we need to do both. We need to continue to build up downtown, but we need to start investing in neighborhoods. You just saw what happened yesterday. Yesterday was a prime time example of our policies not being correct. City of Cleveland just lost population again. Mm-hmm. Council was going to go from 17 down to 15. And look, they didn't go down by a large margin, okay? Roughly about 3,000 to 4,000 residents, right? If we were building houses on the other side of the city, instead of just on one side of the city to the air, I'm quite sure we could have had 3,000 more residents in the city of Cleveland. But yet we're glad that, we tore down that house, and that vacant house has been there, that vacant lot has been there for the last 15 to 10 years, and it still stays vacant on that side of town. We've had little or no investment in the neighborhoods, and we've had little or no investment on the east side of the city of Cleveland. That has to change.
Maybe this is one of the hard things you're talking about, but let me ask you, and then we're going to go on to the lightning round quickly. Okay. Does Cleveland have a systemic race problem that divides us, and how will you address it?
We've always had it. This is nothing new. And I've always said it, that we've got to come to the realization that's a river out there, that's not a wall. And for too long, the people on the east side are afraid to go west, and for too long, the people on the west side are afraid to go east. And I got a prime time example of that. As you know, as councilman, because you've interviewed me on more than one occasion when we used to have family unity in the park. Mm-hmm. I represented Lukeyster Park, which is the largest urban park in the entire state of Ohio. So every last Saturday in July, for 15 years, I would hold a free concert in Lukeyster Park and have fireworks at the end. And I remember it vividly because I would do all that I possibly could to bring the right groups to that park. Groups that I knew everybody loved. The Temptations, the Ohio Players, the Average White Band. And we would promote it across the city. The vast majority of people who would come looked like me. And I remember that when we brought the Average White Band one time, I remember it vividly. The Average White Band came and they played free. About a month or two later, they came and they played downtown at the House of Blues. People were out the door. And I remember someone writing a comment. It's a white person who wrote the comment too. He said, "It's amazing. The Average White Band just played a free concert at Lukeyster Park and you guys wouldn't come there, but yet you came to the House of Blues downtown and paid money." See, we gotta change the concept for what this city is. We're one city. We're one city. When the Cavs won that championship, we don't have 1 million people that live in the city of Cleveland, but 1 million people came downtown. Because we thought that when the Cavs won that championship, we all won that championship. If we're going to change this problem of race in the city of Cleveland, we gotta believe that when someone gets shot on 176 in Lakeside, on Lakeshore, A person that got shot on the east side should affect the person on the west side. A person that gets harmed downtown, that should be affected. Everybody around the city should feel that. The poverty that's going on in our city, everybody should feel ashamed that 50% of our children live in poverty. And the only way you're going to solve that problem is everybody believes that these problems, which are solvable, these are man-made problems, therefore man can solve them. Then we've got to all come together to believe that that problem is our problem, your problem is my problem. And if we believe that, Sarah, it's not a black problem, it's not a white problem, it's not a Hispanic problem, it's not a gay problem, it's not a lesbian problem, it's our problem.
Yeah.
And we're going to solve it together.
Let's go on to the lightning round now, Zach.
Yeah.
What's your favorite city park?
Luke Easter Park.
Perfect. Set you up for that one, didn't I?
Well, that was easy. That was easy.
Again, quick answers for these like you just gave me. Who's been the best mayor in your lifetime?
Well, you got to give me two on that one. George Voinovich and Mayor Michael R. White.
Cleveland Indians, Cavs, or Browns?
Oh, you can't be on that one. No. I won't tell you which one of my favorite teams, but I'll tell you my favorite sport is baseball.
If you triage City Hall departments, which one needs surgery right now?
Oh, building and housing.
Burke Lakefront Airport, keep it open or close it?
You can do both. And I laid out a plan to do both. Go to zackreed.com and you'll see my plan to do both. You can keep the airport, but you can also do mixed use and construct around the airport.
What's your favorite Cleveland restaurant?
Blue Point.
Who is your second choice for mayor?
I don't have a second choice. It's only one choice, and that's Zack Reed.
Cleveland's corporate community, friend or foe?
Friend.
What's your workout routine or pastime?
Well, until I started working on this campaign, it was to go to gym downtown and work out 3 to 4 days a week. But now I just knock on a bunch of doors. I've gone through 3 pairs of shoes already. Look forward to going to my 4th when I make it to the general.
Time for a tough one now. In the past, much has been made of your battles with drinking and your DUIs. In this race, the candidates aren't bringing it up. But since you want the top job in the region, any drinking problems you have could potentially impact the city. So, do you still drink, and how would you describe your state of sobriety?
I'm in a good place right now when I think about my sobriety. I've gotten a lot of great help from, been in a lot of great rooms. A lot of people have given me great prayer. It's been a tough road along the way, but it's been a successful road along the way. And I would say since my last DUI, I've got reelected. I've held the job as the Minority Affairs Coordinator for the Secretary of State. So I'm doing very well at this particular time.
Zack Reed, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sarah.